Let's push the thinking a bit further and eventually get to tax rates. So this is part 3. This is a link to part 1. This is a link to part 2. And in part 3, we're going to use some different times, some different rates. So 2.5 times as fast. So remember, you have to add that one part. So it's a total of 3.5 parts. So this is the 100%, or the one part compared to 2.5 times. This is 1 times. You add them together, you have 3.5 parts. So you have to divide that 6 miles up into those 3.5 parts. That's basically changing this to a decimal value, or figuring out what the value is for one part. So that's 100%, and then another 100%, another 100%, and then half, 50%. So I wrote this up here, just another way to look at 6 divided by 3 and 5/10. That's the same as 6 over 7 halves, and that simplifies to 12/7, which is equal to that same 1 71/100 miles. So this is one part, and then this is the 2.5 times. 1 part, 2 parts, plus a half a part. So rider number 1 is going to travel towards rider number 2's home for 2.5 parts, which is this 4 miles and 29/100 of a mile. You're going to travel that far in 30 minutes. So it's right here. Travel 4 and 29/100 miles, and you travel that distance in 30 minutes. That's the slope. Difficult numbers, I know. That's why we're doing this. A negative 4 and 29/100 miles in 30 minutes. The y-intercept is 6 miles. So here's the equation. So remember, you're going to take miles away from the 6 miles. So you're getting closer and closer to rider number 2's home. Rider number 2 is going to ride for that 1 71/100 miles. That's one part. I'm going to ride that far in 30 minutes. So that's the rate. So 1 71/100 miles in 30 minutes. So set those two expressions equal to each other. And then solve for x, and notice that when you combine their rates, 4 and 29/130 plus 1 71/130, they combine to equal 6/30. So it's 6 miles in 30 minutes. And so then when you solve for x, notice that you're going to multiply once again by 30 divided by 6 is 5. So there's that factor of 5, and 5 times 6 means they'll travel that combined 6 miles in 30 minutes. So this is an interesting rate. It's 1 623,000 times as fast. So here's the one part, that's 1 times as fast. That's this one part right here. Then the other portion of this problem is the 1 623,000 times. And that's this right here. This is 1 time, and this is 623,000ths of that 1. You have to add them together. This is one part. This is 1 623,000. So now it's 2 623,000 parts total. So divide that 6 miles up by that total amount. And this is going to tell you how much there is in one part, how many miles there are in that one part. This is also the same as changing this value to a decimal value. So it's 2 287,000 miles are equal to one part. So this is 100%, or one part, another one part, and 62 3/10%. Add them all together, 262 3/10% of 2 287,000ths. That's the one part here. So I wrote this up here. So 1 623,000 times as fast. Change it to a decimal value. So this is one part, and the remaining is that 1 623,000ths. This is one part plus what's left over. Add them together, you're going to get 3 713,000ths. So now you can write the slope and the equation. So this is a negative 3 713,000 miles that gets traveled in 30 minutes. So here's the slope. It's negative because it's miles being taken away from the 6 miles. And then rider number 2 is riding one part, which is 2 287,000 miles in 30 minutes. And they end up over here. They meet over here after 30 minutes. So set these two expressions equal to each other, this expression here and this expression down here. And when you combine the rates, they are going to combine to equal 6 miles in 30 minutes. So multiply that 6 miles by the multiplicative inverse of 6/30ths, which is 30 over 6, and there's that factor of 5 once again, and that 5 times 6 equals the 30 minutes. Apply that same thinking to sales tax, and here the sales tax is 8.75%. So let's say you go in, you have a meal, it costs $41, and so the one part will be that $41, and the sales tax will be 875 ten-thousandths as much. And so you add those two together, the total number of parts is the $41 plus the 875 ten-thousandths of that $41. And so you take $44.59, that's the total amount with tax, and you divide that by the total number of parts, that equals 41. So basically you're changing this to a decimal value, which turns out to be a whole number of 41. So one part is the $41, it's the 100%, and then the sales tax is 8.75%, which will turn out to be over here $3.59. So what I've done over here is I wrote this out again, and I just wrote this is 875 ten-thousandths times as much. It's a small part of $41. And so then add the one part to that, divide $44.59 by the total number of parts. So this is the tax rate, 8.75%. And then when you add the one part to it, you're going to divide by that factor, which I'm going to start calling the tax factor. So $44.59 divided by 1 and 875 ten-thousandths equals the $41. So if I multiply the cost of the meal before tax by this tax factor, that's going to tell me what the total cost is, $44.59. So here's the one part, and what's left over is the $3.59. That's the 875 ten-thousandths of 41. So that's the smaller part, the 8.75%. So now we can write the equations. So this slope is a negative $3.59 for every $41. And that simplifies, if you change that to a decimal value, to 875 ten-thousandths for every dollar. So that's the slope. So this line is going down a total of $3.59 to cover this $41 out here. And the y-intercept is $44.59, so you can write this equation. Down here, the meal cost $41, and that's $41 out of a total of $44.59. So it's $41 out of a total of $44.59 to reach $41 for the cost of the meal. So that just has a slope of 1. So this is just changing that relationship, $41 for $41 to 1. All right, so take this expression and this expression up here, set them equal to each other. So now if we combine these two rates, this is 875 ten-thousandths plus 1. So that adds to 1 and 875 ten-thousandths. So we've added the one part and we've added the tax rate together. That equals $44.59. If you divide that $44.59 by this whole tax factor, so this is now a factor of the times the $41, divide by that factor, you're going to get that $41. So what that means is I can take any cost of a meal before tax and multiply it by that factor, 1 and 875 ten-thousandths, and that's going to tell me what the total bill is, the cost plus the tax. So for example, this was the problem, $41. So you multiply by the tax rate plus 1, so that's going to give you the factor, 1 and 875 ten-thousandths, and you walk out the door having to pay $44.59. Here's an example for $35. multiply by that same factor. So it's the rate plus 1 equals $38.06. So it might be useful to go back to the previous problems and list the rate and then list the factor for each problem. See what you come up with. See what the pattern that's starting to develop.